If your government decided to freeze your bank accounts today, do you think they might have some power over you tomorrow? Did you know this has already been tested successfully in a first world country this year? What if I told you there were people planning to take complete control of your money and therefore control of your life, your choices, and your future? Some might call you a conspiracy theorist for even thinking it, except it is happening in plain sight. It's just being positioned as something that's good for you. And what if I told you the dominant countries of the world are leading you to believe they are in conflict when they're actually working together for the sake of a one world monetary system? It's called misdirection. And until you see what's hiding in the hands behind their backs, you will have no choice but to follow along with their agenda. You will own nothing and be happy. And apparently, this refers to your money now. It's not my saying, it's officially published text within the World Economic Forum, a highly inclusive club of billionaires, global policymakers, and heads of central banks, all of which who met in Davos this year to further this reset agenda. This is something I forecasted to our clients a full 10 years before it became public knowledge. Your only way out of this is to be 3 steps ahead, is to play them at their own game and think for yourself and know the central bank's plans before they execute them. This video will show you their plans, one of which is the CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, programmable money that's in full control of those behind the program itself. And those that got us into this mess, from automatic taxation to when and where you're allowed to make purchases to the next level of control at the push of a button. Buckle up and get ready, because we're already on this ride. Coming up. Remember all the words that had their definitions changed over the past 24 months? Well, guess what definition they're changing now? The definition of money. There are 4 pillars of money, the original 4 pillars. It's a tool of accounting for measure, a tool of barter for trading, a store of value for fair payment of labor, and finally, a tool of savings for future use. When we were on the gold standard, all of that was actually true. But once they started to shift us off, things started to change. And now central banks are changing the very foundation of money. So far, they've removed one of the pillars. They've gone from 4 functions to 3. They're saying a store of value. Well, inflation should show you that that's a lie. A unit of account and a medium of exchange. So long gone now is the tool of savings for future use. At least they're more honest about that. The White House released a first ever comprehensive framework for responsible development of digital assets. Look, I'm going to back up here before I move forward, because I have been saying this since, frankly, 2009. That when Bitcoin came out in January of 2009, and then they started their quantitative easing, free money printing, in March of that same year, that it was a setup. And now where are we inside of this setup? Well, millions of people globally, including 16% of adult Americans, have purchased digital assets. Not me, mind you, but 16%. And that means that they have reached that adoption momentum. And so now it's time to take it to the next step. Because frankly, in my very strong opinion, and those that have been watching me for a while know, that this was all part of the plan. They know how to make this shift, and it's to keep things as normal as possible. So they need a level of adoption of the new money standard. And in this standard, central banks want actually more direct control. Because right now, if they make a policy choice, It takes 18 months of working through the system to see if they got what they wanted. No, that's not really going to work very well for them. They're going to want more control of this. Now, you've seen this money flower before, and let's just go over it again, because money needs to be widely accessible. And now they're talking about digital, because that is so much more convenient and so much easier to control. Central bank issued, because even though they have completely screwed up since 1913, we've got to go into a new system. They managed to hold on to that control for a long time via confidence, and that is being shaken. And they also needed to be peer-to-peer or token based for, they say, safety. All of this gray area is all central bank control. Okay, so they already control that area, including what they're proposing now. There is this small little area here for digital tokens for private cryptocurrencies. And there's even a smaller area for cash, because if they came out and pulled the cash away from you, you would know something has changed. And Edgar's going to put in the description a piece I did a number of years ago on breaking below the lower zero bound, which is how they would get you to volunteer getting rid of the cash. And they've been doing a great job of that, as we all know. And then there's one more area I want to show you, and that's commodity money, gold and silver, physical. And I would like you to notice that that is the only money that is outside of the central bank's control, which is likely why the Bank for International Settlements, which is where this money flower comes from, has said that gold money is the only financial asset that runs no counterparty risk. Everything else is counterparty risk, including cash, which is inside of the purvey of the central bank. So let's take a look at the future of inflation, because isn't everybody talking about inflation these days? So this is the setup. This is how they're going to justify this next phase, shifting us into the next phase. How a move to an electronic money standard, right now we're on a paper money standard, to an electronic money standard can lower the inflation target towards zero. Zero inflation. Guess what? Gold did that. Gold has done that for 6,000 years. But I'm going to trust the central banks to take me to zero inflation. A world with lower inflation and even zero inflation and no persistent recessions may sound like a pipe dream, but we argue that it is possible by transitioning to an electronic money standard. Oh my God, does that not sound like utopia? Well, I would argue it kind of probably depends on a recession for who and not a recession for who. Because it should be pretty clear to everybody that central banks create winners and losers. And all they have to do is eliminate the zero lower bound. Now, what is the zero lower bound? That means that when you get to zero, it's hard to go below to negative rates. And they've been testing that since 2009, and it hasn't worked. But they've been testing negative rates, But let's eliminate that completely, and we won't get any inflation. It will empower the central banks, and they could possibly move toward targeting full price stability. Well, price stability is you're not going to ask for a raise if your perception of inflation is really low. With zero inflation. Follow the links, read this for yourself. So let's look at this electronic money standard. The zero lower bound arises when a government issues pieces of paper or coins guaranteeing a zero nominal interest rate over all time horizons. Okay? So they issue paper and they issue coins, and that paper, it's a debt instrument, right? It's a Federal Reserve note. It's a debt instrument, but it does not pay interest. It does charge you inflation tax. There isn't a hidden inflation tax. There is now a growing body of work developing mechanisms, because this is easy to do with algorithms, to expand the central bank toolkit, because they're out of tools, to overcome the zero lower bound. Oh, that means that they can go below zero. That's what they're talking about. Its elimination opens the possibility of a zero inflation target. Now, it is not what's true that counts. It is what is perceived to be true that counts, says Henry Kissinger. All they have to do is eliminating the arbitrage opportunity between cash that guarantees a zero nominal interest rate and money in the bank that would earn negative interest rates. So in other words, if you started watching your bank account evaporate, right, the principal go down, and you know you're not spending money, it's because of the negative rates, then you would go and pull your money out of the bank to preserve your principal. Now, not your purchasing power, your principal, because that's what negative rates do. They erode your principal. So all they have to do is charge the same level of negative rates on the cash. When you withdraw it, when you deposit it, when you use it, there will be a chip in there. And so if they charge negative rates, well, guess what? Your cash is also subject to those negative rates. And voila! Except, let's be really clear on this. Now there are only two functions of money, and that is as an accounting tool and as a tool of barter. Forget any level of store of value, let alone long-term store of value. For that, you gotta have this. But the new money that they're proposing, it's one that they can control directly. So now the problem with the central banks in 18 months going through the system, well, guess what? Once they institute this, if you're not spending money fast enough, or you're not spending money on what they want you to spend money on, that's a button push. And what are you gonna do? That's why it's so critical to have this, and as well as, real money outside of the system, real money. Because you can always make a deposit, and that's how you're going to protect your principal. That's how you're going to protect your purchasing power. So let's go back to the future of the money system, because the central banks are at the core of it. And in this Bank for International Settlements paper, there were some key takeaways. Let's look at them. Central bankers can execute policy and modify rates instantaneously. Boom, button push. Doesn't cost very much to create this money, doesn't cost very much to control this money. It's a button push. They want you to believe, now that they got you used to the crypto universe, and I mean certainly Wall Street has taken over it. Private cryptocurrencies, bad. But central bank digital currencies, good. God, I feel like Frankenstein, but that's what we're looking at. CBDCs, they say, can do everything that cryptos can do it. But they do it better because, after all, they are trusted. Do you trust them? Because, frankly, I don't. So let's look at this user identity and privacy issue. Because while many people might think, they've gotten us used to being a whole lot more open and, who needs privacy, blah, blah, blah. Well, I need privacy. It's nobody's business what I do. As long as I stay legal and on my own turf, it's nobody's business. But a CBDC is not subject to the practical limitations of paper money. Heck no, it's not. But anonymity in a CBDC system could present greatly expanded, the justifications, money laundering, a proliferation of financing and terrorist financing risks. Oh my God, look at those risks. But don't worry, because these risks could be more easily mitigated in an identity verified system in which intermediaries collect and verify customer information. What's an intermediary? A bank or any kind of financial institution.
If we were to pursue a CBDC, it would at a minimum have the following 4 characteristics. First is intermediated. Second is privacy protected. But third is identity verified. So it would not be anonymous. It would not be an anonymous bearer instrument.
They even admit that it's not anonymous, but they can't help it. But don't worry, they won't do anything bad with all of this information and data they're collecting. Yeah. Let's talk about programmable controls. A CBDC with a common interface for intermediaries could also provide opportunities for enhanced private sector data sharing and data pooling, because with big tech, clearly, we don't have enough of that. It's not pooling. It's all getting consolidated into one place. This is a club, and you and I are not in it. A CBD system could increase the amount of data generated on users and transactions. The collection and storage of this data would pose obvious privacy and cybersecurity risks, but it could offer opportunities for proper authorities to leverage. Oh yeah, they're going to leverage it. They're going to leverage it good. But I got news for you. It will not be to your benefit. It's really critical. This cross-border activity is more important than your privacy or than anything else. And this is the justification for a one world monetary system. It's right here in black and white. Follow the links, read it for yourself. They want an integrated global value chain, mean that the world is no longer a collection of island economies, but rather a dense network of interconnections. So all we're hearing right now is about deglobalization. Look over here. This is that misdirection, another example of the misdirection. Look over here. We're hearing about deglobalization, but that's in the supply chains. Over here, they're talking about a dense network of interconnections, and this is all through the central banks and the financial system. That interconnected system is falling apart, and because it's already incestuously interconnected, it will reverberate throughout the system. And so what they're talking about is doubling down on what isn't working. Yeah. That makes a whole lot of sense. But of course, if the central banks have direct control over all of this, then they can keep control of it, right? Well, they're losing control of the system, so do you trust them? The construction of multi-CBDC platforms illustrate the potential for decentralization. Now, have we not learned about decentralization in the crypto world? And so we go, oh, decentralization, good. Except that all of it is guided by your group of central bankers. So it only appears decentralized. It's not really decentralized. And when there's more than one currency involved, more than one central bank needs to take part in the governance of the payment system. So they are coming together as a group to control the world monetary system. Trusted notaries can manage the shared ledger, and central banks are the natural candidates. Do you trust them? I mean, I know I'm being redundant in that question, but that's really what you have to answer for yourself. Because if you stay inside of this system and do nothing about it to protect your wealth, to protect your purchasing power, to protect the value that you've already accumulated, they'll take care of that for you. You don't have to worry about it because you will own nothing and be happy. Do you believe that? It's true. Money can't buy you happiness, but it sure does take the yuck off your head. Using real names rather than private keys, that's what the CBDC is about. So there's no privacy. They'll keep talking about, though, how important that privacy is, so they get you to think that they actually give a crap about your privacy, but they want to know everything. We've been shown over and over and over again how our governments and how our central banks have collected data on innocent citizens. So you may say, why does that matter to you if you have nothing to hide? I'll tell you why it matters to me, because it's none of their business. As long as I am not doing anything illegal, it's none of their business. I want my privacy. I want the wealth that I worked so hard for. You realize you work for and try to save money that by design, since the day you were born, by design, you have been losing purchasing power. They just like it slow enough that you don't ask for a raise. It's okay if the head of the corporations make 1,000 times what their workers make. That's okay. That's not inflationary if the corporations are making all that money. But you ask for more money? Oh, no, we've got a wage price spiral inflation. That's a bad thing. It's garbage. It's all misdirection and garbage. On a common CBDC platform, transfers are recorded in a single ledger, one step, one world money. There it is. There it is. Their words, not mine. That okay with you? It's not okay with me. In sum, central banks are working together to advance domestic policy goals to support a seamlessly integrated monetary system with concrete benefits for their economies and end users. Yeah, which end users? You? Them? Yeah. So what does the government get for this? You know, I never get political, and the reason why I don't get political is because the politics are just there to justify and legalize the theft, because there are some laws that are going to have to be changed. But let's see what the government gets for this. This is from a 2017 report on the benefits for tax enforcement that provides the government with greater information on individual consumption. They want to know everything. They want to know how much money comes in, how much money goes out, where it goes, and they can control it. It'll generate information on and improve existing links between wealth, which are traded and non-traded assets, home ownership, pensions, and capital incomes, interest, dividends, capital gains, property income, pension accrual. They want to know everything, but almost everything there, and I'd like you to just look at that list. They're all, assets. Well, the real estate is the only asset that is actually a real physical, tangible asset, but it's an immovable property, which means they can tax you. And what are you going to do? You're going to carry your house on your back and go someplace else? No. So everything else, you notice they didn't mention gold in there, did they? They didn't mention silver in there, did they? Because this is real wealth that's easy to put in your pocket and move anywhere in the world. But you can't do that with any of this other stuff. But they can track it all, and they can determine what your taxes are. They can pull those taxes out anytime they want. You have absolutely zero control. Zero control. International information exchange can be made automatic. Yeah, just an algorithm, and can be improved by creating international registers for asset ownership and capital incomes. One world government, one world governing. Yeah, that sounds like a great idea to me. But it allows financial institutions to act better as third-party reporters on capital incomes and wealth for the government. So this is what the government gets out of it. It's amazing. And hey, just the other day, there was this very quiet announcement by the Federal Reserve. Oh, well, what are they doing? Federal Reserve Board announces that 6 of the nation's largest banks will participate in a pilot climate scenario analysis exercise designed to enhance the ability of supervisors and firms to measure and manage climate-related financial risks. Now, you can be sitting there saying, what does that have to do with me? Well, number one, these are the 6 banks. And of course, they're all the same names that you know and love or not, that have done all sorts of, been right on the up and up. Yeah, none of these guys have paid fees and fines for manipulating any of the markets. But anyway, Bank of America, Citigroup, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan Chase, Morgan Stanley, and Wells Fargo. So these are the guys in this pilot program. And now you still could be saying, well, what does that have to do with me? First of all, these are all of the commercial banks. So even if you bank with them directly, obviously it's going to have an impact. But if you think, well, I don't bank with them, my money's in a credit union, or it's in a community bank, or it's in a smaller bank, but those guys still have to go to these commercial banks to get cash, to deposit cash. Remember, in the, well, you might not remember unless you've seen it. And if you haven't seen it, please do yourself a favor and watch it and read Breaking Below the Lower Zero Bound, because it's just a brilliant report and still remains one of my all-time favorites. But they have control of everything. And many people believe that this is the setup to social scoring, therefore control your ability to access and use the new CBDC money. Well, how would they do that? Well, let's say you like beef. And hey, it's the humans and it's the cattle and it's the lambs, it's the meat. They're creating so much pollution. It's not all the cryptocurrencies and the big textile mills and etc. No. It's the people. So if you choose to use your CBDCs and they put a cap on how much meat you can have a month or a week or however they're going to do it, and you go past that, guess what? It may just automatically block you. Thank you, algorithms. It could potentially be a way to control your access to credit, to your ability to buy a house, to rent, to get a job, etc. But that was just quietly, they're testing this. They're starting in 2023. They're going to run it for a year. And hey, it's October. And I want to just remind you, I said at the beginning of this year that this was going to be a pivotal year. Why did I say that? Because in 2023, the LIBOR is supposed to go away. And the SOFR, the new interest rate benchmark, is supposed to be in place. and there's over 600 trillion in notional value derivatives. All of that needs to be converted by 2023. And when they tested it in 2000, and I think it was 19, it was a big fat fail. They tested it with 80 trillion. And then you heard nothing about it, but they postponed requiring the SOFR in every contract till 2023. So they couldn't do it then. Do you think they can do it now? It's never in history been done before. All of this are huge experiments, and they're experimenting with your life, with your savings, with your children's future, with your future. Is that okay with you? That's up to you. I can tell you, it's not okay with me. So I want to show you what their plan is. Because the original functions of money, as a reminder, an accounting tool for measure, a tool for barter for trading, a tool of savings for future use, and a store of value for fair payment of labor. Everybody wants to be fairly paid for their labor. Everybody wants their wealth to last forever. But they don't want your wealth to last forever. Do they? No. But the fact of the matter is, only gold fulfills the original 4 functions of money. They've taken 2 of those functions away. Fair payment of labor, because if they could push a button and push in negative rates, well, you've worked, you've made your deposit, and now boom, it's attacking your principal. You're not getting fairly paid for your labor. It's bad enough that inflation is eroding that. That's why it's not a store of value. Not a store of value. But they're taking both of those out. So all this new money is a tool for accounting and a tool of barter for trade. That's it. What is its value? What are you working for? You will never, if they have their way, the likelihood of you having the ability to accumulate wealth in this new system, some will. But will that be you? Probably not. So just kind of watch, because originally we had gold money, we had silver money. This is labor-based money. It's real. It's commodity-based money. It's tangible. And it's used across the entire global system, economic system, art, food, manufacturing, everything. It is in your control. You hold it, you own it, runs no counterparty risk. Your privacy. It's out of the system, as we saw on the money flower. Then they transitioned us to the Federal Reserve note. This thing. It's a debt-based system since 71. It's in their control because interest rates were the way that they controlled the rate and speed of inflation. Now we've been anchored at 0. This is why and there's no purchasing power left. This is why they have to change. But at least if I have this in my pocket, it's still private. Doesn't protect my purchasing power. It does, at this point, protect my principal. And this is where they're taking us. Central bank digital currency. It's programmable fiat money. Who's going to write the programs? You? No. They're going to write the programs, and they're going to write it for their benefit. It is in their control. You have no privacy. None. CBDCs will reduce the money functions down from 4 to 2. And those functions will be fully and instantly controlled by central banks. Do you trust them?